Morning, everybody. This is Gil here. Dr. K, I guess, is sitting in the dark in London, where I guess the power is out there. So, but no worries. I got this handled as usual. Let's see. Just want to make sure everybody can hear me okay. Okay, very good. Anyways, let's just take a look at what's going on here. Basically, when you look at the indexes, I mean, the pullback over the last couple of days strikes me as normal based on the fact that you had a sharp run off the lows of February. You're going chopping sideways for a couple of months and you break out. Now you've run up all the way here. The NASDAQ hits 5,000 on Monday. And of course that gets everybody excited, but that's kind of the peak right there, and we come off the next day on heavier volume. Although notice how you close mid-range. Trying to make this big here so everybody can see it. You close in the upper part of the range actually, and then yesterday lighter volume, and you close in the upper part of the range again. So overall you can't say that this is anything outside of normal pullback. Volume is heavy here at off the peak, on the little gap down off the peak on Tuesday. But you close in the upper half of the range, and then here you close near the top of the range, and you're up today. You might still chop back and forth. I wouldn't really consider that abnormal either. So I think it's really just a matter of watching the stock. So we look at a few of the things. I think the real key in this market is trying to find stocks that have the potential to move up rapidly and to capitalize on them. I have to say one of my biggest positions now is GoGo, which I first bought right in here. We talked about the pocket pivots down in here a couple of webinars ago, and then you had a Bible gap up here, and then another gap up on earnings, but at this point you were kind of extended. Make that a little bit bigger. And so it's normal for it to kind of stall out, and then you dry up here. I thought that was a buy point right there, and you're continuing higher, and I wouldn't be surprised if you saw this thing at $30 relatively quick. I think that there, and as I've talked about in the previous webinars last week and the week before, I think they're coming into their own finally, and it takes a while sometimes for stocks to grow up. And you look at GoGo on the daily chart, came public, and nice little flag formation, comes off the 10-week line. I think there's a pocket pivot in here at a gap up, and it moved up. And that was it. And then it's built this long base, and you can see that selling volume on the right side is dried up. So you're coming up, you're clearing these highs here at the 20 level, and I think for the most part you're clearing through most of this, so it looks okay to me, like it wants to go higher. And so on that basis, I like the stock here and actually own it in pretty good size, and it's one of my biggest positions right now. That's not to say though that there aren't tricky situations. If you look at, say, Palo Alto Networks, we had a pocket pivot, a big continuation pocket pivot on an upside reversal on Tuesday after the company came out with earnings, and then of course the thing totally flakes out the next day on heavy volume and comes right back to the 10-day line, which is where it's sitting now. But again, the context of this having already broken out, had pocket pivots in here and moving higher, sort of sets this up. So you may just chop around in here for a little bit, and then maybe you head higher later on. But I think for the most part you have to consider the fact that the stock has had a long run. So so where's the potential juice? I think maybe in some of these stocks that are just starting to round out. Or one stock I think probably has a shot at going higher is Facebook. It's been in a long base, and now it's trying to come out. Very strong above average volume yesterday. You had the pocket pivot here. Actually, this was the point right here where I was shorting the stock, thinking it might hit resistance at the 50-day, and I could feel it wasn't getting any, there wasn't any real selling in the stock, and so I just came in and went long, and the thing popped the next day. Still long the stock, and it's pushing for the prior high, which I think is 82.17 right here. Let's see. Just taking a look around. I think it's still a matter of stocks. You look at Cuervo, QRVO, Cuervo, whatever you want to call it. Pocket pivots in here. You had one here, and I believe this was one also. So you had 3 pocket pivots in here, and now this thing's going higher. It's the merger, or as I like to call it, the love child of TriQuint and RF micro devices. So this thing's trucking higher, but you have to buy it in here. I think it's pretty extended at this point. Cyber is trying to come around, up a couple of bucks today. It's right around the 10-day line. Now the trick here is if you count your 1, 2, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and this is the 9th day where you have this big volume spike here on the sell-off off the peak when JP Morgan downgraded it. So now a couple more days and you'll be beyond this big down volume bar, and then you're looking at this volume bar as the amount you need to exceed, which I think is what, 1 million or 2.4 million shares roughly, and you need to exceed that amount to have a pocket pivot in 2 days. So I think if the stock's able to hang along the 10-day, I'd be keeping an eye on it here along the 10-day line. It may set up for a continuation pocket pivot, and this may coincide with the pricing of the secondary offering, which I think is around 3.2, 3.3 million shares of stock that's coming out in the next few days, I believe. So somebody says your Twitter profile picture looks like the daily chart of Zyop. Actually, it is. Kevin Marter put that up there, and he's asked. He's telling me, guess what stock it is. I haven't been able to guess what stock it is. So, and I don't think it's Zyop because we've had that chart logo for a long time. But Zyop's moving, and I talked about that one. I told you guys it looked to me like it was growing up around the $10 price area, and I don't necessarily have to find a stock at $7-8 and get all excited because it moves up 2 points to 10. In this case, I think letting it get to a higher price and seeing how the volume is increasing, the average daily volume getting up much higher, up to about 40 million a day, puts it in a better position in terms of liquidity, and also telling you that it's growing up to some extent and institutions are starting to participate. So that thing's moved along with Intrexon, which has been a stock to own, and we talked about it right in here when it was sitting right along the 10-day line, probably 2 days, I believe, before it took off. And that one has moved up. They're associated with Zyopharm, and the two have trucked higher, and this one's boogieing higher. The other one that's pretty interesting here, very risky, and in my book, you got to be careful when you're playing something like this, but definitely tradable. If it runs up like this, you pull back. Now it has a 65-day exponential moving average here. It pulls back, and then it launches again on this. I guess you'd call it some sort of a weird breakout from a one-day cup with handle. And then from there, you pull back in again, and then you take off and launch higher. Now you're gapping again, and this thing is on fire. But you probably should have bought it down here. Another one I'm looking at that I picked up yesterday is this Vivint, whatever, solar. Right here, had a pocket pivot yesterday, and then launched higher today on a gap up move that you might consider a viable gap up. If you want to use the low of the day at 925 as a stop. So I think that might be feasible as a viable gap up. As it turns out, I don't know if anybody of you saw the article in IBD overnight or last night. Today's paper actually came out last night, talking about how the solar group or the solar area, the residential areas, has very small penetration, even though it's becoming much more efficient. And so there's a large potential for growth going forward in the residential area. These guys are in there, along with Solar City, which is trying to turn, but I think is the dog of the group. The ones that I have liked are SunPower, which moving up. It's moving a little higher today. The gap up I thought is viable, and you get the pullback down to the 200-day moving average. I think puts it in a viable position on the pullback, and now you're moving higher. First Solar also gaps up here. You notice how it closes at the low and fakes everyone out. You think it's ugly, and then it gaps up the next day and just continues higher. It's actually been the best performing solar stock recently. I think, though, Vivint is going to take that over. But that looks pretty good to me. And if you don't mind, a buck to the downside is your risk. If you can handle that, then I think stock has potential possibly to go higher, although they're losing money. But you can see they're coming after it. So trading about close to 40 million in daily dollar volume today, so that looks pretty interesting. Let's see, we talked about Cuervo. Twitter, I guess there was news yesterday that Facebook is looking at starting a service to compete with Twitter, and so the stock sold off. Found support at the 20-day line, but it's running into trouble here. It looks a little bit toppy to me, so I'm a little wary of this thing, and I'd rather own Facebook. So the other one that bothers me here is LinkedIn, which you had the Bible gap up, and it just it's been going sideways for 3 weeks. And you got to wonder, why this thing hasn't gotten going. It's just too slow. And I think Facebook maybe is the social networking leader, and I think that's probably where you want to be, and that's the one that I own. So, and I've traded Twitter, I've traded LinkedIn, but they seem to be just choppy and sloppy and really not going anywhere. Meanwhile, I'm looking for Facebook to potentially get up much higher, and I think by the close, if we hold up, my guess is we may clear to a new high in the stock, so we'll see. Ambarella is pulling in pretty good. It has a tendency to be kind of volatile, though, and you had a Bible gap up on a breakout from this base. I don't know what you call it, a double bottom or just a base, but it's coming in hard, and it's testing the lows of the day, so I own a little of this. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with it. Bought it yesterday, and I'm looking for it to turn around because it generally tends to trade in a volatile sort of manner, and so it'll run up and then pull in. And if you think about it, you're pretty extended off the lows, so a little pullback here probably is not that big of a deal. And what I'm looking at here is on the pullback, I got a little bit of it, but I might want to buy more if I see something start to turn here on the 620 as it gets close to this low, which is around 64.30. So you're not too far away, about 50 cents away. So you're getting close to a point where you may find support, and you've undercut this low here, and it may start to turn. So if you get a 620 buy signal turning, then you might try and come into it and load up. That's kind of what I'm looking at doing, but we'll see. But in the meantime, I got to say I'm pretty happy with GoGo and Facebook, and I could own those two stocks and just kind of hang out, I think. I generally like to have 2 or 3 positions. I don't like to spread myself too thin, although there's a lot of stuff that seems to be doing pretty well today. Grub, somebody mentions that. I don't see any issues here with the stock. You've had a sharp move to the upsides, and you moved to a higher high here. It was all over IBD. It was all over, well, the news services had all the buy recommendations from analysts, and so it got a little bit obvious. And if you look at this, if you bought it down here, this is where I bought it. So, I've got a good 15% on it right now, and I'm still sitting on it, looking at possibly buying more on this pullback, because you're coming in and the volume is drying up. And if we look at, take a look at this list, see if I can find it in here. Grub is running minus 41% right now, so it looks to me like it's drying up as it comes into the 10-day line. So I would just be sitting tight here and possibly looking to add shares here on the pullback. Doesn't really bother me. I don't know, it needs to form a handle. Somebody's saying, well, maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. Maybe this is the handle. If this is a cup, this is the handle. So I don't really see it as needing to form a handle here to this cup. I think you already formed a little handle here. It's about 2 weeks long, and that's sufficient. Well, all I would be doing right now is focusing on the pullback into the 10-day line as a possible area to pick up shares. So, and the lower the volume, the better. And you can see we're kind of we're very much in a low volume dip today coming in. Let's see if this changes at all. Let me intraday update. Still selling AMBA here. It's interesting. They don't love it. They loved it yesterday. Couldn't get enough of it. Closed near the peak of the range and comes in hard. But I wouldn't be surprised if you see it turned around by the end of the day. Let's see, minus 41.4. So what I define as a voodoo pullback, a lot of people want to know what the precise percentage is, but I don't really operate on that basis. It's generally, though, minus 35% or less. So, you'd say Sonic Corp here. Whoops, it's updating. Give it a second here. Sonic Corp up here, minus 75.8. That's pretty low. And that's definitely a dry up. And I'll get to that as soon as this turkey finishes. There we go. So if we look at this, I'm going to use this. I like this. It's a little bit of a complicated or complex chart view, but it's got some interesting indicators that I want to take a look at here. You can see it shows the 5-day and 10-day pocket pivots along the bottom, and you also see the kahunas, which are market signals down at the lows. You'll notice we haven't seen any kahunas on the general market, so that's a good sign. You see Sonic after a nice move up going tight, and you're drying up here, so that potentially is something to look at. CDK Global coming in on light volume today. I don't really like this. Doesn't really go anywhere. It's kind of boring, so I don't really see it. Here's this Fibrogen. Tried to get going last week, but nothing happening. This is my buy list, obviously, and just kind of cruise through it. Spirit hanging out. Here's Virgin America. I think is trying to turn here, and if you look at this, you came in. You had this is a pocket pivot right here on earnings. Okay, which I think in this case you have a situation where the 50-day is overhead, and also all the overhead from the left side of the pattern. So what you've got going on here, I think, is just a matter of sort of working its way sideways, tightening up. Notice how volume is drawing up in the extreme, and if we look at the volume levels today, VA is trading minus 56.6. So it looks like the sellers have pretty much disappeared here, and this should try and round out. And I call it a roundabout because that's what it does. It rounds about, and it rounds out the lows of a new base. And so it takes some time. I don't think when you have this pocket pivot here, I don't think that it's had enough time really to round out the lows and really kind of work out some of the overhead that exists over here. So I think you see that coming into play, and it keeps the stock down, but it's going code blue, as I call it, up here on these indicator bars, everything turning blue and looking like it may try to turn here. So I would keep an eye on this, and it may turn if you see the other airlines turn as well. So among the stocks that are drying up on on voodoo type pullbacks, you got Michael's companies trying to turn, coming off the it's pulled, it ran up, pulled back, but again another boring name to my eye. Spirit Aerosystems kind of boring. Virgin we looked at. Electronic Arts kind of boring. Barracuda Networks. Now this thing, corrected after earnings. We had a nice gap up here, and then it blew to the downside after earnings, and it's rounded out a new base. So I'm wondering, you got a volume dry up here, minus 64. I'm sorry, what is it? Minus 52.9%. So you're drying up here. It's trying to close at the highs of the range. So I wonder if it's going to turn, but it's a thin stock, trades 345,000 shares a day. So I'd be I'm a little wary of that. But in any case, it's a smaller stock if you like them, and the group is strong. But for my money, I like Cyber, and I'm just waiting. I traded it off the lows in here, but for some reason it's not marginable, which kind of ticks me off, and so I'm not able to get really big in it, and it messes up my buying power. And that's also been the case with Intrexon. So the two best stocks I own in this market, at least in January and February, have been Intrexon and CyberArk, and they're both non-marginable, so they use up all my buying power. Or rather, they have a 100% maintenance margin requirement. Let's see. Getting back to, CSIQ, someone's mentioning. I told you guys to watch this one last week. Came out with earnings. I don't know what the problem is here. Here we go. And you have a gap up move here and on heavy volume. So that kind of looks viable. That's the pattern or the position of the stock, which is not unlike SunPower or First Solar. And so I don't really consider that necessarily a big problem. Possibly viable here. It's a nice liquid stock, and earnings came out, I think, pretty strong today. Let me take a look. 228% increase. I think the estimates were for actually they were just below estimates. That's interesting, and it's gapping up. Next quarter they're expected to do 1,029%. So that's pretty impressive. 79 cents. They did $1.28 this most recent quarter. Let's see here. What else we got going? Disney, had a Bible gap up, slowly moving higher, but nothing really thrilling here. A Biomed going nowhere. El Pollo Loco going nowhere. There's a bunch of them going nowhere. It's taking a little time. O'Reilly had a pocket pivot here, but it's not going around. I don't know why this thing's so slow all of a sudden. It's decided it's going to slow down. Maybe the power outage in London has something to do with it. Vasco data, getting hit, not really going. Taser got hit, not going anywhere. This Paycom, we talked about it last week, and it was trying to come out, didn't quite follow through on any kind of a pocket pivot, but it's basically bouncing along the 20-day moving average, so nothing terribly thrilling there. X-ray just kind of hanging out. You can see that it's a matter of getting into the right stocks, trying to recognize where the money is going to come into in a big way and then being there when they start to move. So, for my money, I think Facebook is a great position to be in. I think GoGo is a great position to be in. I think the QRVO is a great position to be in. Expedia, trying to come up. That had a nice gap up, runs up, pulls in. Now it's trying to turn. But again, a big, old, boring name in my book. I'm seeing Grub pulling back a little bit more, 42.81. Doesn't really, I think you could test the 10-day moving average somewhere around 42.25, I think it is, on Grub, so I'm not really concerned there. LinkedIn as a snoozer still, talked about that. Celgene, a little bit of a dry up on the move back up to the 10-day, but nothing really thrilling there. Someone asked me, why don't you like the biotechs? And I do, actually. I like medical stocks. And if you go to, let's take a look at this. The only problem with these biotechs is that they're great when they're going up, and they go up fast, but then one day you might wake up and find that you have a what the heck? Give me a second here. Here we go. Oh. They have a big gap down on news, and so that's a problem. When they're running up, though, it's great. You see PCYC jacking to the upside on big volume. It's not quite a pocket pivot because you're still quite above. Well, here was not a pocket pivot, but the gap up today, I don't know if it's a Bible gap up. You're kind of extended right now, but that's that's having some good news, and that thing's going bonkers. But the other thing to think about is from the gap up here, it's like a $14 stock going to 23, so keep that in perspective, which is a pretty good move. But if I like something like this where you buy it, it got triple-digit earnings for the last 10 quarters, and it's been very strong, and you buy it in here when it's very quiet and subtle, and then it runs up and it breaks out, and then it yanks right back to the top of the base here. Let's see, so comes right back to the top right there. You see that? And right at the 20-day, and that's where you'd want to enter it if you're trying to buy the breakout, but hopefully you're in it already. But this has a nice move, a little more stable, big earnings growth, and I think in that case, that's the kind of name that I prefer, to tell you the truth. So I know that some of these biotechs are awesome, and they're moving, and you can play the moves, but it doesn't get me excited. So PCYC being acquired, that would make sense. Let's see. I'm going to answer some questions here. Somebody already Our daughters love Michaels. My kids love Michaels too. My daughter does, definitely. Whoever's having audio problems, that's probably on your end. So I'm going to go back. This is a little bit slow here, so I'm going to go back. Someone's asking about FEYE. Is this a handle, or what is this? No, wait. Is Fey handle too low? Well, I wouldn't really worry about it being a handle. All I would focus on, all this stuff, a low handle, a high handle, handle on drugs, whatever it is, I wouldn't really pay attention to it. The key here is that you had a Bible gap up here, and now you're consolidating. And you may meet up at the 20-day moving average. Volume is drying up today, so right now it's running about 25% below average right now, so not terribly light, but it is drawing up on the pullback, and it had a big move. That was a pretty sharp move. You go from 38 on the gap up to 46, and that's about, do the math there. What do we got? 8 points on the 38. So that's about a 20% move, and now it slows down, it pulls in. So it looks okay to me. It just needs some time, but I see what you're talking about. Is this a low handle? I really wouldn't get hung up on low handles or whatnot. The technical action is what it is, and I don't really need to look at this and say, oh, the handle's too low. If you look at something like a Splunk, for example, was this handle too low? No, continued higher. So I wouldn't really worry too much about it. You could ask, is this handle too low? That it's neither here nor there as far as I'm concerned. And if you want to get bogged down with trying to label handles this or that, or bases this or that, then I just think you're just spending too much time trying to apply labels and less time being able to understand the real-time price volume action. So I really wouldn't get hung up on it. Someone says, looks like the perma bears are out on Apple, and now it's at its 20-day today. Perhaps a test here at the 20-day. I don't know how you could be a perma bear or even a perma bull on any stock, but it's coming in. There was some delay on some iPads, I guess. That's one of the news items I saw today on the stock. But the stock's had a big run-up, so it's pulling back. And this language, though, like, looks like the perma bears are out on Apple. This is the conspiracy theory mentality. Somebody was tweeting me the other day about how the perma bulls are going to get killed when they start to sell. They start to sell, which I guess is just market participants in general, and that's going to be the end. Well, you'll see it when it happens. But this idea that there's always some sort of conspiracy behind any of the action is kind of silly. And I think it clouds one from being able to see what's really happening here. I mean, give me a break. This thing's had a sharp move to the upside, so it's entitled to have a pullback in here. So that looks pretty normal. I wouldn't say the volume's terribly heavy as it pulls in, but it's it's sitting here. I think one of the things I got to check here. Give me 1 second here. Is this? This needs to be exponential. That's a problem. Okay, there we go. So you see it pulling right down to the 20-day exponential. Looks like just a normal pullback to me, and the volume's running about it's 18% above normal. But I think just news, and also given the sharp run up, it just gives everybody an excuse to sell. So it doesn't strike me as here or there. So I wouldn't get hung up on it. More questions. Have you forsaken the VoSI chat room? Yeah, kind of. I don't really see any reason to be in there all the time. And I think there's a danger of getting into a chat room every day and just chatting about what's going on, because I think it can be misleading, and you're operating on a very short time frame. So, my focus is on making money in the markets. That's where I make my money, people. Doing websites is fun, and there's you get a nice little income stream. So you don't have to take money out of your trading accounts to pay your bills. But the bottom line is my focus is on making money in the markets, and spending time in the chat room takes me away from my focus. I could argue even that doing these webinars intraday takes me away from my focus, and I don't like that. So so unless you're going to pay me $10,000 to show up in the chat room for half an hour. I'm going to be there once in a while. Dr. K doesn't really get in there at all. And I also feel that if we're going to have a chat room, the two of us should be in there, not just one of us, and it shouldn't be all Gil all the time. So that's my general view. It doesn't mean I won't be in there from time to time. So let's see, MBLY. I wouldn't mess with that. Piece of garbage. Somebody says, we all have emotions in the game, but as I have read and been beaten into, and as has been beaten into me, Gar, I'm going to sort of make your sentence make sense if that's okay with you. Price and volume drive the bus, and that's absolutely right. Price and volume drive the bus. Everything else is noise. Conspiracy theories when one of your stocks is pulling down is just noise, and don't let it get into your head and cloud your judgment. It is what it is, and that's pretty much all it is. Nothing more, nothing less. Anyways, too many opinions in the chat room can cloud your judgment and make you second guess yourself. That's a good point, and that's one of the things I'm talking about. All right, is Umbrella going to turn? Because I've got to get an itchy trigger finger here. 64.66 on the bid. And we'll give it a little time. We'll hang out. Maybe later on. Is Portfolio Simulator Dude still around? No. There's no point in having a Portfolio Simulator Dude, mainly because I can't do it. I can't create some silly little portfolio of 3 or 4 or 5 stocks and tell you how to handle them using these anal retentive rules about where you add and where you don't. What I do is I find inflection points, I go in heavy, and then I sell into big upside moves. And to me, that requires a lot of focus and a lot of time devoted to watching what's going on and being attuned to what's going on. So trying to run a portfolio that way for somebody, namely Portfolio Dude, doesn't really fit what I do. And that's why I've given up the idea of running money for other people, because I've tried it and I realized that I can't do it for other people. I can do it for myself, and I can show other people how I trade to help them develop their own ability, but I really can't create a portfolio for somebody. It's, go find a broker or somebody or a mutual fund that does that. That's not what I do. And I've had to come around to the realization that that's not my strength. And that's fine, So anyways. RWLK, pocket pivot today. That has not hit my... I wouldn't mess with this. I'm guessing this thing's probably moving because everybody sees this thing going nuts and they're all going to jump in it. And I'm trying to figure out who's buying this thing. I think if this is for real, you're going to see a handle form, and I would hang out and wait for that. There's nothing wrong with buying it up in here on 18, 17, 20 even, if that's where it sets up and starts to act well. And I would mainly focus on looking at a proper entry. When you get into this thing, the possibility of it coming in, like for example, you look here, this thing hit what, 1766 on a peak, and if you bought up there, the next day you're down at 1450, so you're down 20%. I don't like that kind of stuff. I'd rather see this thing become a little more stable, see the volume pick up. You're seeing it now trading 1.2 million shares, so it is getting a little more liquid, but that's still a little small for an $18 stock, really. When you think about it, it's trading about 25 million in dollar volume a day. So I got to wonder who's buying this thing. Is it really institutions? And I'd rather see it set up, because if it's for real, it's going to go from here a lot higher. So no rush and no need to play these things. And I think with real walk, if you want to try and see, I'll get my fingers to do this properly. If you want to try and buy this, go ahead, but I don't know if it's turning, So watch tomorrow, it'll be up $5. I don't know. Somebody says, well said, listening to your stream of consciousness on these webinars is very helpful, seeing how you think. Yeah, and it's every week, rather than every day, and I just think there's too much noise. I mean, that's one of the reasons I like the Gilmore Report, and I like doing that, because it's twice a week, and I think it's helpful for people because they don't get too much noise. Some people want a lot of noise, some people don't, but in my view, the less you have to say, the better, and it also, I think, talking all the time and putting out stuff all the time sort of dilutes your message. That's my feeling. So, my thinking here is to rethink being in the chat room all the time, and then doing webinars, once a week, I think is enough to kind of convey what's going on. And I'm actually with Kevin Martyr starting a Monday strategy session webinar with Kevin Martyr, who's going to participate and have ideas as well. Kevin's pretty good. We're going to be doing that on the Gilmo Report website. Something else to check out. But I also like that aspect as well. You have Monday, so you start the week. Monday trade occurs, so it gives you sort of a sense of what's happening, and then have a strategy session for the rest of the week. I think that works well. And Kevin actually has some interesting ideas that are different, and he has a lot of experience. He's not the kind of guy who's going to jam and be up 115%, but he'll put up steady numbers. And he is a co-founder of MarketWatch. So I think that is another resource and give you another view of somebody who is a professional. And Kevin's like myself, he trades for a living, and so is somebody who's really doing it and making money at it. Anyways, let's see. TSCM gapped up on March 3rd. That would be, okay, we're starting to see the turn in Ambarella. I think the stock's okay. I just, like I said, it's volatile, and I think you got to kind of be prepared for this. That's why buying a little position yesterday and then letting it run up a buck or so and then watching how it comes in, it looks like it's just doing what it normally does. And I've seen this thing go down 3 points, and I'm sure a number of you have as well. It'll go down 3 points in the intraday, and then it'll turn like a maniac and head back to the upside and then be up a buck. And you've probably seen that happen. So somebody says they want you in the chat room all the time, so they have to think less. Yeah, I suppose so, but yeah, that's another trap, and it's the guru trap. And somebody thinks I'm some guru who never makes a mistake. Guess again, I make mistakes all the time. The key is in recognizing when you've made a mistake and shifting. And if you can keep your mistakes from hurting you badly, then the times that you're right and you make big money with a big position and get it going the right way, that makes up for all the small errors. But my mission these days is trying to impart knowledge to people as to how they can discover themselves in the process of becoming a better trader, because I think it's really what trading is all about. It's a process of self-discovery, and definitely everybody's unique in the way they handle the market, I think. Like O'Neill used to tell me, he had 10 internal portfolio managers when I was there back in the late 90s, early 2000s, and he told me every one of you guys trades pretty much with a different, the same system, but a different sort of flavor to the way you trade it in terms of aggression, how aggressive you are, how concentrated your positions are, the types of stocks you like to buy, and so on. So I think all of that is part of the process of self-discovery and learning what works for you. I'm sure that there are a lot of people out there who don't have the psychology to run my account the way I do, or run their account the way I run mine, rather, because I can deal with a fair amount of volatility, 10% drawdowns sometimes. Last year I had 2 drawdowns over 12%, and I think a lot of people would freak out. You know, when you're running a hedge fund for people, they all freak out, and then you got to write them a letter explaining what happened, but for me that's pretty normal. But I understand that there are a lot of people out there who can't do things the way I do it, but that's fine, because if you can find a way to make money consistently and make 20 or 30%, maybe in a good year you do 50, 60, consistently, you're going to make a lot of money over the long haul. And you're also going to be trading according to your own psychology and not trying to mimic somebody else. So I think the trap in commenting all the time about the market, from my perspective, and me getting out there and saying stuff, is that people will become dependent and not engage in this process of self-discovery that I think they need to engage in order to become better traders and learn how to really do it for themselves. So, blah, 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 now you know where I'm coming from on all of that. Somebody says, I like the fact that you make me think about your views and watching how the market works and then attempting to fit that into my personality and how I'm learning to trade. That's exactly it, Gar. Somebody says, I prefer the webinars because I try to connect with your thinking and learn for myself. So, yeah, some people get the idea, and that's what it's all about. And I think that's what makes, the whole spiritual thing is, yeah, that sounds great, and it's a great marketing BS line, but spirituality is just, I think, embodied in a phrase, I think, from Confucius that basically went something like, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water, after enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. So, I don't think enlightenment equals marketing opportunity or something that you artificially inject into the process. But I do think that when you're doing trading right, it incorporates some of those spiritual aspects of being in the present, being in the zone, and we've talked about that in some of our books, how surfers get into that zone where there is no time, everything basically becomes in the moment, and I think that's a big theme in my approach to the market, but it's not something conscious where I think, oh, I'm going to be spiritual today. It's just how things work out if you're doing it right. So, and staying in the present. Anyways, where were we? I'm lost. Let's hustle through some more names here. This is Atis. I think it's pretty interesting, and you have to buy it on the pullback to the 10-day. It's a buyout. It has buyout potential. In other words, there may be somebody, they're trying to get bought out, I think. So you had the gap up, but it's held the 10-day. You got to buy when it comes in. So it's kind of one of those names. It's going to be slow. It's had, here's the IPO here, and here's the base coming out. So it's had a nice breakout. But it might be something for someone who likes slower stuff to own and then hang out and see if you get bought out. So let's see. Somebody says it is hard to always stay in the present. Not if you just do it. So I don't think it's a matter of reading books. I mean, I don't read books about spirituality anymore. I think it wastes of time. Just like when I was a broker, I remember all the brokers, all the rookie brokers would all have all these sales books, and you got to get the new Zig Ziglar book, and you got to go see Tom, what's his face, the guy who has the big horse-like teeth. I just read one book, How to Sell Anything to Anybody by Joe Girardi, and then got on the phone. And I think that what that illustrates is the whole process of being a broker and getting clients is getting on the phone and presenting to people on the phone, so you stay in the present in that process. If you read too many books about investing or about investment psychology, and I think there are some essential books to read, but at a certain point you learn by doing. And getting hung up on a lot of this external stuff, reading books, sort of draws you away from the real process, which is you do it and you learn to stay in the present by doing it. So it's probably just something that happens over time. Let's see. Starbucks. Nice pullback to the 20-day. There's our 20-day exponential. It is the magic moving average. It has been for a while. 10-day things don't hold so well along, so as you all know, I use the 20-day exponential more so than the 10-day. Although, coming up to the 10-day, if I don't see a stock pulling into the 20-day on a volume dry-up, I'll look at the 10-day instead. Let's see. Twitter's kind of twittering its gains away. You see that? I'm always saying this thing's a short, frankly. Zeltic, something of a disappointment. They came out with earnings pulling into the 50-day moving average. I guess they weren't good enough. This is what the stock looks like. It has had a pretty big run since it started its life, I guess, down here. Came out of this big base, and it's just hanging at the 10-week line, but it looks a little fishy to me, so I'm not really thrilled with the way it's acting. I did have dinner with somebody last week who had the procedure done, and they were pretty enthusiastic about it. So, and then the guy bought this stock. He's a hedge fund manager. So let's see. Somebody says, let's see. Some great questions here. HDP. I like this stock for a little bit, but I couldn't hold the 10 days, so that was it for me. I just puked it. So that's that. It's gone. If I see something trying to turn around and it pulls into the 10-day, the 20-day, and it can't hold, I'm just gone. And there was news yesterday, the stock tried to rally and it couldn't hold. So this may need more time. It's an interesting concept, but it may just need more time. And that's pretty much that. NLNK hit my screen. Well, we talked about this one when it was in here, but it's kind of a funky stock, hard to play, but it's extended now. But again, it's another one of these biotechs, and probably, I'm going to guess, if I recall correctly, has no earnings, does it? Yeah, the EPS growth is all based on, well, they're showing $4.05 in the most recent quarter. That must be due to some special item. I don't know where that came from. Is that right? And sales 169 million, up 58,000%. I don't know. That's interesting. But it's up there. Can't buy it now. Let's see. Someone says, as a Gilmore Report member, will I receive email notification of the Monday webinar with Martyr? Yeah, it's going to be a separate service, I think. So I'm not sure how Kevin's going to work, but I'll be on it too. So, but you will, I suppose. Same way you get one. Somebody says your Gilmore Report is paid for itself. This is blah blah. Blah 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 blah. Somebody kept typing this in. It looks like you copied it in there a couple of times there. Anyways, where are we? Let's go and look at Ambarella. I think it's trying to turn here. Looks like it. If it is, I'll be loading it probably on a cross here, probably around 65.35. Looks like, yeah, nice double bottom. You know, it's apparently what happens here, and you saw this with, like, say, data, which is trying to turn. And it's bouncing. Basically, what happened here is failed at the $100 price level, century mark price level. I went short stock here, and then it was a cover yesterday coming right back to the top here because you're at the top of this handle area right here. And so you're bouncing right off the 10-week line, and if we pick up volume here, it may be higher volume. So this actually may be back in play as a long idea, believe it or not. But it was a nice tactical short off of the 100 level. Doesn't mean it's going to break down. The ones that were really good as late-stage fail base were Workday, which I went short Monday, and then it's undercutting these lows and coming into this area of congestion, which strikes me as a cover point. And then you look maybe to re-enter on the move up into the 20-day moving average. So I'm watching Grub coming in down 84 cents. So what's up with that? Maybe it's losing its luster here. It's going to scare everybody out and then take off. The other one was Splunk. Starts out looking like a viable gap up, ends the day looking like a big ugly reversal. And from there, I thought that was a short. In fact, last week I was right here with you guys, and it was trading around 70.71, and I told you all that's probably a short right there on the 620. And bingo, that gets a nice, move down to 63. So a 10% breakdown there. That's nice little profit to bank. On the short side, as the market's coming in, you see if you have a couple of short positions while the market's coming in for a couple of days, it'll allow you to hold on to your better acting longs. Like the GoGo or Facebook or even Grub's been acting okay. And the solars, SunPower, First Solar. Now you got CSIQ, Canadian Solar moving. You got this Vivint Solar. Very interesting to me. I got to look into this one a little bit more. They're not making any money. I know that much, but looks like they're hopping and bopping here. So, okay. First Solar, we looked at that. LCI we looked at. Software, we talked about this one a couple of weeks ago. I told you guys it's getting tight along the 10-day, so it probably looks like it wants to go higher, and it has. I don't think we've had any pocket pivots. Wait a minute, let's see. Nope, and it's making a new high today, so that thing keeps cruising along. Shake Shack. I looked at that one last week, and it's moved up a little bit, but not a whole lot. But it's trying to round out. And this one works, the HDP doesn't work, but this one will work. But that's what the base looks like, and it's a little funky right now. So maybe it is an IPO U-turn. So market kind of chopping and slopping about today. Nasdaq's up 5 now. Dow's lost a little bit of its luster, up 21. But again, you're in this position where if we look here, you could chop sideways for a period of time. It wouldn't surprise me. So, I wouldn't get too concerned one way or another. Just watch your stocks. So we'll see what happens. I mean, if they start to take this thing down in a hurry, then I might be concerned. So, but if you've been owning some stocks recently and you're up on them, then you've got some room to see how things play out. And if necessary, if you see some setups on the short side, you could come after things on the short side. Sure. So that's a possibility too. I'm noticing, starting to see some things kind of give it up. PANW coming in. It's negative. Twitter just turned red. Could be a short. I'll have to look into that one. Anyways, let's see. Any more questions? JetBlue. It's just kind of pulling in along the 10-day, nothing really exciting there. TSL, Trina Solar is moving along with the rest of the group. So, you know, the Solars are all trying to get going here. So they look pretty decent. Any other questions? Anyways, I mean, you can see where the money can be made in this market. I think you got to be in the right stocks. It's not, you know, there's some things work, some things don't work. I think you're better off with some of the newer merchandise situations sticking there, and you know, trying to find the things that are going to have the big moves and then being in the right place at the right time, and also being opportunistic in terms of your entry points. So anyways, any last questions? I'm going to wrap up because I'd like to get back to trading day. For me, because you're getting a nice pullback. Indexes turn negative. Well, the S&P's down 1, the Nasdaq's up 2, but they could turn negative. That one surprised me. And if that's the case, then I would be looking at, you know, potentially throwing out some shorts here, see what's set up. Some of these things look pretty damn ugly in terms of stocks like Workday coming up into the 50-day. So that might turn out to be shortable on a rally. I'd like to see it rally, though. The other thing about this market is you got to be careful because things will look like they're coming apart, and then you get all heavy short, and then everything turns around and goes back up because the market just kind of flops around. And we may be waiting for tomorrow's jobs number, so something to think about. Somebody wants a couple of questions. CRTO. Well, this had a breakout, you know, on a pocket pivot, and it's pulling back to the 20-day line. That's about it. Nothing really thrilling there. It's a recent new issue, so you're trying to come out of this sort of ugly-looking cup with handle thingy, and it ain't happening today, at least, so it's pulling in. So I don't know if that's viable. It's a thin stock, not really something I would touch, to tell you the truth. JD, not happening either, so try to come out. I don't know what to think about this one. I really wouldn't mess with this. Trying to form a cup here, and you got this big volume reversal, so I don't really think that you're looking at something that can be considered a, you know, pocket pivot or any kind of a viable move here given this big volume reversal. So I'd just stay away from that. Anyways, that's all I've got, you guys. So thanks for showing up, and we'll catch you guys next time. So have a good day.